Okay, so I'd like to welcome Brett Peneguy from Brett Services LLC. How are you doing, Brett?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome. So thank you very much for coming on to the podcast for an interview. I really do appreciate it. And we're just going to get right into the first question. So maybe tell us a bit about yourself and your business.
Well, my name is Brett Peneguy, as you introduced me, and I'm 26 years old, and I live in a little town called Houston, Georgia, which is about an hour north of Atlanta. I've been doing lawn maintenance, landscaping, anything to that effect. I'd say probably about 10 years by myself. But I started at a very young age, like most of us probably did, as a little neighborhood kid, just cutting yards and fell in love with it. And then, like I said, 10 years, once I got my license, I was ready to go, and just been doing it, and mostly as a side gig because I have a full-time job. But, as far as, just grass cutting goes, that's all I do.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. So actually, my next question was going to be: is your lawn care business your main hustle, your main income, or your side hustle? So you mentioned there it's your side hustle. So how do you find balancing those two? Do you do lawns on specific days each week, or do you do them in the evenings? How does that work?
Well, the way that my full-time job works, it's a second shift job. I work from 4 p.m. to midnight.
Okay.
And I'm actually an engineer at the local university. So,
nice.
I'm able to work during the day. I try to get started early in the morning and work till about 2 to maybe 3 o'clock in the evening or afternoon, and then go to work. So that's how I'm able to balance it. But most days are, especially during the summertime, it's go, go, go. But during the slow seasons, it's, probably, I'd say 3 days out of the week.
Okay. So are there specific days that you do the lawn care?
Well, it really just depends on what it is. It really just depends on what it is. But a lot of times it's going to be based on my routes. Like on Monday, I have a set route, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, and then on through the week. But like I said, it just depends on what the demand is. I know that right here at the tail end of the season, there's really not much going on. So I try to schedule everything on like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That way I got Thursday, Friday, Saturday to, focus on other stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that you started lawn care at a young age. So what first attracted you to the lawn care industry and made you want to start your own business in the first place?
Well, it's kind of funny. As a kid, I grew up playing baseball, and I've always enjoyed being outside, and I think that's what attracted me to do that. And so, when I would be out on the baseball field, and they would cut it just before the game, and I just fell in love with the smell of grass, and that's kind of funny. And because I have I wouldn't say serious allergies or anything, but I don't let that affect me. So with that, it's just something that I grew to love. And then when I got to doing it, I was like, hey, I really enjoy doing this, and I think I can make some money doing it.
Okay, very cool. So you mentioned there as well in your opening that you're basically a one-man operation.
Right.
So have you ever tried having employees? Is it something that you maybe think of for the future, or are you just like strictly like me, always sort of leaning towards that sort of single owner operator type business?
Well, it's funny you asked that, because I tried employees in 2018, and then I let them go because they were it was slow, and I didn't have enough work to keep them. It was costing me more to keep them than it was I was bringing in money. And then this year, I hit a point in the busy season, which is from about, I'd say, May till about August in the year. And he was a college kid, and he ended up having to go back to college. So he cut loose, and then everything fell back on me. And I was like, wait a second, it's, and I'm finding that labor is a big thing across the board with all companies. Nobody seems to want to work. And so it really gave me the opportunity to sit back and say, hey, okay, do I really want to have employees, or do I just want to stay at one-man operation? And I think I've come to the conclusion that I'm going to stay at one-man operation going into 2020, just because it allows me to be able to focus on what I want to do. And that way I don't have to worry about paying another guy that's more money in my pocket, so to speak. But I do have guys that I can rely on to help me on an as-needed basis. So, like I said, I'm just going to stay at one-man operation just because it's simpler. It's not hectic. It's just something that I can manage, and I can pick and choose when I want to work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot like me. You're striking a chord there with me. I'm the same way. I find my favorite thing about having a lawn care business and being my own boss is the freedom of being able to choose when
Right.
I want to work, where I want to work, what jobs I want to do. And I find, or I feel having an employee would hinder that, because that's my favorite part, is being able to do that. Like, and
Right.
when I'm working for me, I'll take a lunch and it might be, 10 minutes to grab a bite to eat,
Right.
and then I'm back to work. Where then with an employee, you got to start dealing with, it's got to be 30 minutes, half an hour. You're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, waiting, or,
Right.
or there's a lot of other things, like, some of the rules for labor can be pretty strict where I live. Like, for example, technically, an employee could refuse to go onto a property that has dog waste because it's a health
Right.
and it's like, okay, well, now you're going to be paying a guy to be sitting in the truck because the homeowner didn't pick up the dog poop off the yard, sort of thing.
Right.
So it's like, I found that. And then, like you said, just finding employees to work sometimes. The same thing would happen with my brother-in-law. He had some employees, and it was the same thing. He'd have all this work booked, and then they'd phone in the morning, and they don't show up. They don't, and it was a
Right.
thing. And he's stuck doing all this work on his own. And like you mentioned too, being slow. I remember having a conversation with him and him saying, like, man, like, this guy just doesn't get it. I've had him for like 2 months now. I've been trying, and I used to be able to mow like 22 properties in a day by myself. And with this guy,
Oh, wow.
we're getting like 13 done. And he says, and I'm paying for this. It's like, it just doesn't make sense to keep this guy
Right.
any longer. So I mentioned there that, freedom is my number one sort of motivator in my lawn care business. And it's how I define success. So this is one of my favorite questions that I ask guests. And that is, how would you define success?
Success would be getting up and never quitting. You get up every day, and I think a lot of it has to do with your career choice. And it just doesn't go for us as business owners, that's with anybody. Success, I would define, like I said, getting up every day, going and doing something that you love, and not taking no for an answer, finding some way to make it work, and just pushing through the obstacles, because there's going to be some, and finding any way possible to make whatever it is work that you need to work. That's how I would define success. And just having the freedom, like you said. I think me and you can both agree that freedom is the number one thing to success. Because you're able to willfully go and do whatever you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I said, for me, it's that motivating factor to continue to do it, to choose what I want to do, to be able to, take my kids to school when they were younger, to pick them up after school, to do all that sort of stuff, and fit that those lawns in between that time, and just make
Right.
work, and be able to take off for a long weekend and not have to worry about things like that if I want to spend time with family and stuff. So great answer, and like I said, one of my favorite questions, because not everybody's answer is not the same. They're all different, and they're all
Right.
correct, right? There's no wrong answer in it. So in your business, what type of equipment do you use? Now, I asked this question just to get a sense of the types of properties that you use. So in my business, predominantly I'm using very small mowers, 21-inch mowers, 32, 36 is my biggest mower. And customers will look at me with that mower and go like, what the heck are you doing with that monstrosity on my lawn? Pretty funny when I see the guys on Instagram and what they typically use. So what types of equipment do you use in your business?
Well, I've got a standard Z. I've got a Bobcat CRZ 52-inch mower. That's my main mower. I've got I think it's a 22-inch Toro personal pace mower. It may be a 21. It's one or the other. I've got one of those. I've actually got a 21-inch True Cut reel mower that I purchased back over the summer, and I'm going to try to use that next year because I'm scaling my business down and trying to focus in on those pristine yards, so to speak. We've got steel trimmer, steel edger. I've got a steel chainsaw, 2 Echo blowers, and then I've got a Husqvarna combi unit, and I got a Husqvarna stick edger.
Okay, nice. So typically, with that 52-inch mower, what would you say is like the average sort of square footage of properties that you do, or is it just completely range?
It varies. This year I had one property that's about 1.5 acres, and then I lost that yard. It wasn't working out, so I cut ties with that client. But I think my biggest yard right now is 17 to 18,000 square feet. It's nothing too terribly big.
Okay.
And I'd probably say my smallest yard, which I don't use the 52 on, is probably, I'd say about 4 to 5,000 square feet, if that. Okay. Yeah, it's very, very tiny.
Yeah, very cool. Those are like the typically properties that I do. So what, out of that, list of tools that you were listing up there, what is your favorite tool and why?
Oh, man. This time of the year, I'd probably say our new Echo PB 580T blower. Serious power. It's not the best blower, but it's better than what I had. So, but like I said, this time of the year with fall time and leaves, that'd probably be my number one go-to tool right now.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And you got the, you said the T version of it?
Yes, sir, the T version, yes.
Yeah, very cool. So do you offer any other services besides lawn care, or is it just strictly mowing, or do you do like fertilizer applications as well, or do you do any other services?
Yes, sir, we do. I'm actually a licensed contractor for the state of Georgia for weed control and fertilization. I have not ventured too much into that just because there's a lot that you have to know about that, and I don't want to dive too terribly deep into something like that without fully understanding it. But like I said, I am a licensed contractor, and we do some landscape installs, very small, like mulch, pine straw. We don't do any new construction installs just because I don't have the manpower. I have the equipment, but I just don't have the manpower. But other than that, that's mainly it. But I guess you could say my main focus would be lawn maintenance, lawn care, stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. That's basically like me. Everything is mainly lawn care. I do fertilizers and moss control, that sort of stuff. I don't do weed killers, and basically structure everything else around that for my regular clients. So hedge trimming and things like that I'll do for those regular clients, and some of the other jobs that come up. But as I've gone throughout the years and I've built a bigger customer base of those regular weekly mowing clients, I've done less and less of the things that I used to do when I started out, like power washing and rubbish removal and things like that, to sort of maximize that time. Yeah, basically kind of same sort of thing. So what type of work do you service? Is it all residential, or is it commercial as well?
I've got one HOA that I maintain. It's just their front entrance, and one common area, but the other is residential. I'm focusing more on residential than I am commercial. Even though the area that I live, it's booming with warehouses right now. There's all kind of commercial work, but I'm finding that, and I don't know if it was a recent podcast that I listened to, and they said that with commercial, it's better to venture into that later on in your career than it is to immediately jump into commercial, because commercial is all about price wars, so to speak, and that's why I kind of stayed away from commercial, because they typically want to go with the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
And with an operation my size, I can get by with that, but then I'm probably not even going to break even. So that's why I tend to stay residential, because you can find those clients in the area that I live that are willing to pay, I would say, top dollar for lawn
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very, I can relate with that as well. I'm not a commercial guy at all for a multitude of reasons. The price is, in my experience, every time I've done commercial, it always goes back to price. It doesn't matter how good
Right.
you do, how much time you spend. The next year, it's back up to whoever is the cheapest price that's doing it. And, it's very hard to find loyalty in terms of commercial work, where residential clients,
Right.
you can be servicing somebody easily for 10 years with no issues. And like most of my clients now are credit card on file, and they don't even ask me how much something is going to cost, because the relationship has been so solid for years. They trust me, and I just go out and do
Right.
work and
Nice.
build their credit card, right? So yeah. So this next question is one that I really like asking as well, to sort of dig deeper into some people's business and their struggles. And it's probably the question that would give people that are being interviewed the most sort of pause for thought. And that is, share with us a time that you struggled in your business and what you learned or did to overcome it.
Oh man, this is going to be an interesting one. So in 2017, September of 2007. Well, I would say that 2017. Let me back up. 2017 was probably my absolute worst year in business.
Okay.
Because I purchased my mower in May or June of that year, and I went full force with it. I took on anything and everything, and then July I suffered a heat stroke.
Ooh.
And then so that set me back, and I learned my lesson there, and that's to always keep enough water on hand. It was brutally hot that day. Like I said, overcome that, and then fast forward to September of 2017, and I got involved in a wreck. I was rear-ended, and I lost everything. Lost my trailer, everything but my mower survived.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of put, I lost the truck and everything. And so that really hurt me. And I really sat down and, luckily, and I say luckily because that happened in September, the season was dying down. And I was, very fortunate enough to have some family members loan me some, a vehicle and a trailer. That way I could still, make up for lost time. But when that happened, I kind of thought, man, this, I lost all my equipment. How am I going to replace it? And so, I wanted to get out of it. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, I'm not going to do it in 2018. I'm just going to, probably have a handful of yards and be done. Well, then early on in 2018, I had a good opportunity come my way, and I got the opportunity to bid on a cemetery. And I said, okay, this is the game changer. I said, this is, God said, no, you're not getting out of it. I'm going to let you stay in it. And so coming into 2018, I made a decision to say, okay, I'm going to hit this full force and overcome my obstacles and everything that has set me back. I'm going to come back strong. And but needless to say, I didn't get that bid, but I learned a lot from that. And I was able to just press forward and keep going, because as a business owner, we have to keep in mind that you're always going to have obstacles, and you have to critically think, how am I going to overcome this? Don't always take the easy way out, because there is an easy way, but that may not be the best way. There's always another way to do something. And so overcoming that wreck in 2017 was really the turning point for my company. And then that's when we decided just to hit it head force and just go.
Okay. Very, very interesting story there. That's crazy to have two sort of incidents there that,
Right.
being in the wreck and stuff and losing all of that, but then also having a physical struggle of having a heat stroke, which is
Right.
pretty, I'm guessing, a pretty big shock to the system and
It was.
a bit of a recovery time there to get over something like that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's
Yes, sir.
quite a bit of a struggle there. So on a more um, sort of a positive note or a light note, through your 10 years of being in business, what would you say is your favorite thing about being self-employed?
Just freedom for one.
Okay.
Being able to work when you want to. But also keeping in mind that when you're working, you're working and not goofing off, and just you're getting stuff done. Another one I would say just overall confidence. Um, I would say free will.
Mhm.
Um, it just like I said, it all boils down to it all essentially it boils down to freedom is
Yeah.
all it is.
Okay.
And I think you can agree with that too. It allows you to be flexible,
Yeah.
and not only that, just financial. Because if you're punching the clock for somebody, a normal job is somewhere between 8 to 12 hours a day, and
Yeah.
when you can devote some of that time somewhere else, like in your company, you're making up for that time because you're able to put more money in your pocket. And like I said, it just all boils back down to freedom.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very cool. So, in what ways do you market your business, and maybe share your number one marketing tip?
Well, for me, most of my stuff is word of mouth and networking. I can't emphasize enough on networking. Anywhere that you can network. I found that to be highly effective for me. I use Facebook. Sometimes I'll boost a post and get some jobs there. I
Okay.
used what is that? What is that? Nextdoor. I used that for a
Okay.
little bit. That worked a little bit, and then I wasn't finding any hits off of that. Instagram has been another good one.
Okay.
Um, and then I've got a website and I've got signs on my truck and trailer. But like I said, word of mouth has been the absolute best one for me. With the contacts that I have, I'm associated with a lot of realtors, a lot of builders, so I'm able to get work that way. And as far as a marketing tip, I would say network as much as you can.
Okay.
Anywhere that you can find, do door hangers, you know, postcards. I would do everyday direct mailers. That can get expensive, but
Yeah.
I've never done that. I know people that have, and it's worked well. But like I said, it's just network.
Okay. You touched on something there that I don't think too many of my past guests have ever talked about, and that was you said about Facebook and boosting ads and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe share your experience with that and talk a little bit about that process, maybe how it works and that sort of thing. Like I said, I don't think anybody's ever talked about that on an interview of mine at least.
Well, with Facebook, you have the option to boost your post when you make a post on your business page, and you're able to you can set your audience. There's an age group that you can set.
Okay.
Uh, there's areas that there's a map that you can scale out or in however far you want to go, and you can do anywhere from you can run it for however many days you want, and you can set a budget. Like for instance, I know I think one time I done a $25 budget, and I think I ran it for 5 days and
Okay.
$5 a day, and it never goes over that $5. And it'll actually give you an estimate of how many people it'll reach. Obviously, the higher you go, the better that number is going to be. Um, but like I said, I've had a handful of jobs come out of that, but nothing too extravagant or anything like that.
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. I've talked about I've tried things like community posts and stuff in like local community groups,
Right.
neighborhood stuff like that. But I've never tried doing like a paid boost or anything like that. So do you use any software to manage your business, or do you just take care of the books basically handwritten?
Well, we use a yard book, and that's going to be for our client, keeping up with our clients, how we send our invoices, how we send our estimates. It's a good tool you can pull your square footage off of that. I'll use it for that sometimes. And then for my routes, I actually use an Excel sheet. I'll look at my client list and I'll break it down, by city. And then each city has a designated date. And that's how I come up with my routes. That way, like on Monday may be my Houston route, and then Tuesday may be a Winder route or a Jefferson route. Each city has its own day. And then as far as bookkeeping goes, my wife, she actually takes care of the back end of things. With her being a stay-at-home mom, that's actually been a blessing to me, and she just takes care of the back end on the books for me.
Okay, yeah, that makes it a lot easier, for sure. How do you find Yard Book?
Well, it's kind of funny because I've come across Yard Book when I was following Brian Shane from Top Notch.
Yeah.
That's the same software he uses, and Brian Fullerton with Brian's Lawn Maintenance, he actually uses it. So that's how I come across it, and I downloaded it one night, and I was just like, hey, this may be very simple to use, and then one night I found 8 hours, and I just started dabbling into it, and I was like, this is really simple. This is easy, user friendly. So I just fell in love with it, and I've tried different softwares, and I just cannot find the ability to swap over to something when I find Yardbook just so simplified.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Do you use Yard Book to manage payments from customers, or do you do that manually?
Yes, sir. We actually use Yardbook as well it'll process our credit card. We do credit card on file.
Yep.
I had a handful of people start that this year because I was able to implement that earlier in 2019. But that's something for 2020 that I'm looking to go to is credit card on file. So, and it's actually been helpful for us.
Okay, awesome. So one of the most common questions that I get in my business is, and in fact, I actually had this question yesterday through an email from a client when I emailed them to let them know that I just finished the last service for the season. And they responded back to me, thank you very much, and said, so what do you actually do now in the wintertime? So is there a winter or off season in your business? And if so, what do you do in the winter? And if it's not work related, then maybe a hobby or something like that.
Well, for me, like I mentioned, that one HOA, they're on a contract agreement, so I manage their leaves, Christmas decorations, maybe, going out there once a month in the winter time and making sure everything's tidied up. And then I have a handful of residentials that'll have me come out and do the same thing, but. Here lately, I've been helping my wife's cousin. He's actually got a grading company, and I help him. So running equipment with him. So that's something that I'm finding that I can do in the wintertime, because I'm not so busy, with the grass cutting. There's nothing to do. And then I'd say probably around January, December, January is when I'll start getting everything ready for the new season.
Okay. So how long is your season typically there? What month does it start and what month does it end?
I would say it varies based upon the weather, but normally it kicks off about March. Could be late February, early March, and it has went all the way till November in some places.
Yeah, so that's basically what I've got here too. Same thing. It's typically March that it starts up, and then November everything's wrapping up, and so it sounds about the same. So, what are your future plans or goals for your business?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of changes coming into 2020. We're going to move everybody to a service agreement. Everybody can have a credit card on file.
Okay.
I'm wanting to scale down property sizes. I'm wanting to stay under 3/4 of an acre just because of the time constraint that it is.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to focus in on trying to dominate, maybe one or two neighborhoods. That way I can have a more simplified schedule, and I'm not
Yeah.
bouncing around. I can get in one neighborhood and do 15 yards, 20 yards, and then have another one where I'm doing 10, 15 yards.
Yeah.
Um, I'm wanting to. I don't want to be the biggest company around, but I don't want to also be the smallest company around.
Mhm.
I want to be very versatile.
Yeah.
Um, I just want to. My end goal is to one day build something to where I can leave it to my family, or sell out. If that
Yeah.
opportunity ever presents itself. But ultimately that's my end goal.
Okay. So so does that mean that you'd be eventually planning on going full time in the lawn care instead of the
if that
side hustle?
opportunity
Or
if that opportunity ever presents itself, yes sir, but I don't foresee that happening anytime soon, just
okay.
because my full-time job, that's my main source of income, and they've got a great benefit package. I can't lie about that. They've got excellent retirement, and it's really hard for me to let something like that go and really
Yeah.
take that risk right now,
Mhm.
just because I have a family that I have to take care of. But like I
Yeah.
said, if that opportunity ever presents itself, then that would be the option that I would go with.
Okay. So this next question is one as well that kind of gives people a little bit of a pause for thought to think about. Um, and it's what's maybe the weirdest thing that you've seen or has happened to you during business?
Hmm.
Now, I've told the
Interesting.
story. Yeah, I've told the story like for me of having a client that came up to me, or a lady that came up to me. She was in her 40s at the Home Depot in the garden center. She saw my truck and stuff and asked me to go quote for property. And she gave me the address and she said her husband was home. And so I drove up to her property and it was like this big mansion. And I pull up and I knock on the door. And after a few minutes, this man comes and he had to have been in his 90s, and
Oh wow.
it was her husband. But the weirdest part was that his pants were undone and he was holding his pants up. And I started talking to him and his eyes rolled back to the back of his head. He fell backwards and passed out on the floor in the main foyer there. And I was like freaking out, like, did this guy just die on me?
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I was then trying to get him up and stuff, and he kind of came to, and then just said that he was sleeping, and he tried to come downstairs too quickly, and just being older and frail, he I think I was like calling his wife, going, "Your husband just passed out. He says he's fine, but you might want to call an ambulance or something." Right. So that was the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in my business. Anything that kind of stands out for you in your business?
I guess about the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, and it wasn't on a property that I maintain or anything, but we were adjacent to it, and I just happened to look up and seen a car that was on fire.
Oh, wow.
That's probably fully involved. I mean, just fully engulfed, and there was nothing that could be saved. And it was actually in a, I wouldn't say like a parking lot. It was kind of next to a building, and
Okay.
car was on fire right there next to the building. That's probably the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. But other than that, I can't think of anything.
Okay. Yeah. That's still
Yeah, it
an
was a sight to see,
unusual event.
that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So this next question is one that I really like asking people too, because the answers are always different as well. And it's share your best piece of advice with someone who's just starting out in business. But I want you to come at this from the point of view that this is somebody that you know and that you like and that you would only want the best for. So it's not like some stranger that comes up to you and, asks you. It's maybe, a relative or something like that, and you really want to see this succeed. What would you tell them about starting a lawn care business?
Oh, this is a good one. I'm kind of glad you asked this. But if I had to give some advice on somebody that's first starting out, and I would only want the best for them, I would say don't go out and buy a bunch of equipment. Even if you can afford it, don't go out and buy equipment if you know that you can't afford it, or you just know that you're not going to stay in it long enough. Like I said, don't do that. Don't go into debt just to make this business work. And I would say network as much as you can. Find a mentor. Find somebody that's been in your shoes. Uh, and don't just have one mentor. Go to a handful of other people that have done it. Follow people on YouTube. Listen to podcasts. Pray about it. Ask others for advice. But the number one thing that I could say is don't go into debt. That would be the number one thing.
Okay.
Because in this business, it's never easy. You have to be able to work outside in strenuous conditions, very hot temperatures, very cold temperatures. You have to work out in the rain. You have to be very versatile. You have to be very willing. You have to make sacrifices. And know that there's long days ahead. There's short days ahead, long days ahead. There's going to be a lot of lost time from family, and you just have to understand that to be a business owner and to be successful, you have to make those sacrifices.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. The other thing that I would add to that is that to evaluate the area that you're planning on working in as well, because it is a seasonal business in a lot of parts of the country.
Right.
Some areas they work year-round mowing, but in most areas it's seasonal. And if you're in debt with equipment that you may be overbought, you still have to make those payments throughout that winter when
exactly.
there isn't work to be done with those machines. Just some great advice there. You, I know, have a YouTube channel and an Instagram account. So do you use your social media to grow your landscaping business or for other opportunities?
I try to use my social media as best that I can. My Instagram is more. I follow a heap of other professionals, and I find that Instagram is a better advice platform, so to speak, because we're able to communicate with people that are in different areas and find out, what's working for their business, what's not working for their business, how are they succeeding, how can they give advice. And then my YouTube, that's just something that I started last December, and I'm using that more along the lines of like what am I trying to say here? Like a showcase for my company, so to speak.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. That sounds good. What do you have any maybe tips that you can share with other landscapers wanting to use social media to grow their business?
A few tips that I can give would be now is the time that I would start. Don't wait, because I regret waiting, and because if you wait, you're never going to be ready. And so I think now is just a good time to start. As far as that goes for Instagram, YouTube, anything, go ahead and start now. That way you can get the ball rolling. You can learn, network, and just start. So you got to start somewhere. I would use, and like I said, my Facebook is mainly for picking up jobs and staying current in my community. and then Instagram is more like an advice platform. YouTube is the same thing, more like an advice platform, showcase, where I'm able to actually do reviews and stuff like that. But that would be my number one thing. It's just start now.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So that brings us to our last question, and that is, how can people follow you online?
They can follow me online on Facebook. That's going to be Brett Services LLC. They can follow us on Instagram at Brett Services _LLC. They can follow us on YouTube at Brett Services LLC. We're not a very big channel, but we're not a small channel. We're growing, and I hope to continue to grow, and I hope to continue to get better at my editing and video quality. So that's where they can follow us.
Awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time out today to come on the podcast. I really do appreciate it.